Welcome back to another episode of the Reside Platform podcast. On today's show, my guest is Reside's head of team productivity, Mie Yamashita. This episode is a replay from the webinar we did about 2 months ago called How to Get Your Agents Unstuck and Back into Production. The reason that we're releasing this as a podcast is we got so much great feedback from attendees and viewers that I knew all of our audience out there listening and watching the podcast needed to get it too. So check it out and enjoy. Thank you. Chat is disabled. Okay. Thank you. Chat is disabled so it doesn't distract me. Q&A works. Okay. So looks like you guys can all hear me. We got so many familiar faces. What is going on? Danny, Brandy, Jason, Jennifer, Jerry, Kyle, Mark, Paul, Rick, so many, Scott. Look, so many of our friends on here. I'm so happy to have you guys join us here today. So let's just go ahead and get started, okay? I want to welcome everybody for joining us today on our webinar, our exclusive free training that we're doing today. My name, if you don't know me, is Suneet. I'm super happy to have you here. Now, you know, I'm a team leader. You might not know, but I'm a team leader and brokerage owner. And I've been experiencing a lot of the same problems as everybody else. So we're going to focus on those problems, the critical challenges that we're facing, both team leaders and brokers, is how to get our agents unstuck and back into production. I know firsthand how frustrating it can be when the team isn't doing what they want to do, what you hope that they're doing, and we're here to help you change that. Okay. I have a couple of testimonials of other team leaders just like us who have been through the training so far. Me, if you want to show them, Ross Hardy here, Amy Izzo right here, Tammy, Jessica, and myself. You know, I have agents go through a training that we have developed based on what you're going to learn today. And guys, the feedback and the action, I've done a lot of training, right? I do coaching and all this. Have never seen overwhelming like happiness and excitement over this training and people actually implementing, sharing it with each other. Let's put it like this. I haven't had a negative review from any agent or of mine that I've taken it or any team leader that we've shown this to who has used this yet. So I'm going to go ahead and say that it's working. Okay. A little bit about myself. My name is Suneet. I've been a top agent in Sacramento for about 12 years. I've started a team. My team was the #1 team in California in 2020. We've been the #1 team in the Sacramento MLS for 4 years. I also coach a lot of teams through the Cheplack Live organization with John Cheplack. I own a mortgage company, I own a property management company, and I'm one of the founders of Reside Platform with John Cheplack, Nick McLean, Preston, and yeah, that's the four of us. I almost introduced myself twice. I'm honored today to introduce you guys to our main presenter, Mie Yamashita. Mie is just a badass, okay? She's known for her boundless energy, innovative coaching techniques, and the incredible results that she has gotten, guys, with thousands of agents. Okay. So whether it's boosting GCI or transforming agent productivity, Mia's strategies, as you just saw with the testimonials, have a proven track record of success. At the end of this webinar, it is 100% my goal and Mia's to give you guys exactly what you need to be able to do this. We're going to accomplish that in our limited time. Okay. It's going to be packed with value. Mia is going to walk you through the 3 key strategies that you can start implementing right after this. They aren't theories. It's real stuff that we're doing within our own teams and on the Reside platform for all the teams there, about 50 teams there that have been proven. Okay. This is no like teasing content. There's no pitch at the end. Everything is here for value, trying to give back to the industry. If you stay till the end, we will have a Q&A. So listen to what Mia says. And if you have to leave early, there will be a recording that goes out. But at the end of this, we will have a Q&A. We'll give you guys time to dig deeper on any of the topics with Mia. Okay. So without any further ado, and I know you guys didn't sign up to hear me talk for an hour. Here's Mia. Mia, take it away.
Hey, thanks so much, Suneet. Hey, everyone. Really grateful you're here, and I'm excited to spend some time with you. We're going to address how to get your agents unstuck and back into production. Training really is the backbone of any successful team, but honestly, not all trainings are created equal, which I'm sure you understand that. If your current programs aren't moving the needle, it's probably time to rethink your approach. And we're going to discuss that today. So I want to talk about effective training. Effective training is about more than just imparting knowledge. It's about transforming how your agents are going to operate day to day. So the strategies I'm going to be sharing with you are designed to do just that. They're practical. They are easy to implement. Maybe simple, not easy. They are simple to implement. And most importantly, they're going to give you proven results. We want to see that your agents are talking to more people, that they are setting and holding more appointments, and that they're getting more agreements signed, especially in the climate that we're in right now. And all of that is going to start with you. All of that is going to start with the type of leader that you are. And so there are three things that I want to address first and foremost. This is a subject that I could go deep on for a very long time on the personal work to be a great leader. However, for the sake of time, I've narrowed it down to three different things I want you to focus on as you're getting started on maybe reframing or restructuring your training and getting your agents into production. So number one is production and purpose. We want to be more than just setting the pace, which I see a lot of team owners do is they're usually 50% or more, sometimes up to 80% of the production of their team. And I've seen higher. And they are all about setting the pace and wanting everyone to match that pace, but they're not actually modeling the standard. So we want to see that you are doing production purposefully and remind you that you get what you model. And I'm going to give you guys some insights today on how to stay engaged with your agents. So let's talk about production and purpose. There are going to be agents in your world that are high-level talent and that align with your vision and with your mission. And they are unicorns. And they don't account for the average or even above average agent in your world. Oftentimes, team leaders have this narrative that, it's not that hard. Why can't you just do it? I can't tell you how many times I've heard that from team owners. And I understand that because team owners that have gotten themselves to a level of production that are and want to see that, grow and scale, and they start, bringing people into their world and they start making hires, you're already in that 1%. You have a higher vitality. You have a level of tenacity and perseverance that is not as common as you might think it is. And so, you're actually running it's not that you're running faster than everyone around you. It's actually that you're on a completely different racetrack. You're not even lapping them. You're just running a different race. So being the top agent on your team is not an effective tutorial for your agents. We kind of have this expectation of I showed it to you, so why don't you know it? That is not effective for people to actually grasp skill sets and then turn them into, lag measures under contracts and signed agreements. And your agents aren't you. At the end of the day, they are joining you because they're inspired by you, because they want to be more like you. And so the expectation can't be that everyone should just get it or that should just operate the way you do, because you're you're running a different race. And no one's going to care about your business as much as you do. You can see some shifts in that where people have a lot more ownership over, team culture and team production, but you're the one that is holding the bag at the end of the day. You're the one holding the bag, and you're the one that's in charge of creating the world that you want to live in. You don't want to be held hostage by your well-intentioned but woefully unrealistic expectations of how you hope your agents will behave. One of my favorite sayings are, and you'll see it show up here on my slides today, but our expectations are our own suffering. If you can start to get into the reality of, human nature and how people work, it doesn't mean you close the standard down. We'll talk about that today too. But you'll have a much more joyful experience with that incubation period of getting agents into the production phase. The next thing I want to address with you is that you get what you model. So are you doing what you ask them to do? Are you lead generating? Do you? Do you show up? Are you on time? Do you honor their time? Do you follow up with your leads? Reliability develops trust. It's actually one of the key components of trust building. There are like 8 or 9 different facets of that contribute to the development of trust. Reliability is a big one. If you say you're going to do something, do it. And especially around like standards that you say are important. If you don't follow up on that standard, they are not going to hold it as important as you will. And where are you frustrated? Because oftentimes that frustration is a projection of some of the things that you might be lacking. So do you say what you're going to do, not just once, but over and over and over again? Our agents aren't always trying to get away with things. Sometimes that's our kind of reflexive thought is, they just don't want to work, or they're hiding from their numbers. There's some truth to that, but it's a much deeper truth. They're not always just trying to hide. If they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, it's often because there's not a true standard in the organization, and they've now adopted your programming. And if the expectation is that if they really wanted it, they would. It's not like in dating, okay? If they really wanted to, isn't really a fair assumption of human behavior. You will be happier if you make generous assumptions about their intentions. So this is another key tenet of trust, with making generous assumptions about people. And if you're particularly frustrated about something that your agents are doing, it's likely a projection of your own personal feelings showing up, and address that first. That's not the whole reason, but it often has a lot of impact. So address your stuff first and then find a path forward. If you're feeling frustrated that they're not showing up and you have a very specific trigger around that, I would be looking at how I'm showing up. I'd be like, well, do I show up, and do I do that well? And do I follow through? When I had started my first productivity coaching program, there were 5 people, and I grew that to over 180 people in about 9 months. And we had over 60% of our agents in production. And I started coaching with other coaches, productivity coaches as well. And one thing that I heard over and over and over again from productivity coaches was that the agents just didn't show up. And that must mean that they just don't want it. And I learned early on that if I came from curiosity and if I could put my ego aside just a little bit, I would follow up if they didn't show up. And I would say, hey, is everything okay? I noticed that you didn't show up to the call today. I held a call every single morning from 8 to 8:30. We did role play. We did motivational stuff, mindset stuff. And I would have 50, 60 people on that call every single day from 8 to 8:30, showing up, shouting out their affirmations, cultivating energy. And the only reason that I was able to get people to show up consistently was because I was okay with following up long enough to let them know I care if they're there. If you say it once, like, hey, I want you to be here at this meeting and I expect it, and then you never follow up, or if they stop showing up, you don't check in and see what's going on, the assumption is that it must not be that important to you. That's often not the conscious thought. That often is the subconscious belief that creates the behavior. So you're going to get what you model. And if you're not staying engaged, you're going to have a hard time getting your agents to stay engaged. You cannot set it and forget it with your agents. You can't just say it once and hope they'll remember. The human brain's short-term and working memory can really only hold 5 to 9 pieces of information at a time. So you're going to have to reinforce information and incorporate activities that are going to provide like additional reminders or like coming back around to content. And it would be very helpful for you if you could detach from the emotional charge when you have to repeat yourself. This is another thing that I see happen a lot with team owners. And mostly because there are so many of you are high Ds that having to repeat yourself can feel oftentimes like, nails on a chalkboard. I get that. If you can remove that emotional charge, meaning like not let yourself get triggered and upset, this is going to go a lot more smoothly for you. You can get collaboration from your agents by fostering autonomy and shifting away from standards. And you're going to hear me reference standards, but when I say standards, I really mean agreements. There are agreements between you and your agents because they are business owners as well. And gaining collaboration will help you see better results. And so there's a way to shift this from a kind of a top down, this is what I think, you need to be doing, to a, hey, this is what we do here. And you start to lead them. And when I say we here, I mean us as humans, we don't like being told what to do. And here's a perfect example of that. Have you ever been in a disagreement with your significant other and passions start to rise, frustrations start to increase, and objectively, maybe your significant other is starting to get a little bit upset? And it would objectively be true and potentially a good idea if you said, I think we should all just calm down. Okay. And that's usually a great way to exacerbate the entire situation. We can't be talked out of how we feel, and we don't being like told what to do, but we can be led. And the way that we can lead, first of all, is modeling what we want. All right. You're more likely to get them to do what you want them to do when you're doing it yourself, and leading them to where you want them to go. All right, so we're going to dive into the next phase here. The next stage is where we talk about how do I actually apply, like getting my agents, talking to more people, and that's going to start with the engagement. And then how do I get them to meet more appointments and sign more consults? But before I move on to that, I want to make sure that that it starts with you. It 100% starts with who you are as a leader, how you show up. Are you pouring into yourself? Are you refilling your tank? Are you learning? Are you growing? Are you leading from the front? It's not fair, or not even really a good strategy, to be a disengaged leader who hopes that your rule will just be followed without any interaction from you. You're always going to have to lean back in. So let's talk about agent engagement. How do we get your agents to talk to more people? There are several facets we're going to address today, but I want to start with this connection piece. More connection will drive more activities. So when the expectations are clear of what you want from your agents, and you as the leader lean in, and then the standards are held to empower your agents, then they will be more successful. Those standards, again, are the agreements that you say, here's what I expect, and then I'm going to follow up and make sure that that's happening. So let's discuss agent engagement. We'll dive into these a little bit further, but first, let's talk about your standards. What standards do you actually have in your organization? Again, we don't like being told what to do, but we do like to know what to do. So this is another example of how we can lead people: is give us the parameters, show me what the boundaries are. As human beings, we actually operate really well inside of boundaries. Very few people respond well to micromanagement, but a lot more people do well when they get the chance to execute on their terms, but they understand the parameters of the expectations. So do you have simple, recitable structures to your standards? So for example, do you have how many people you want them to speak to every week, how many MET consultations or MET appointments you want them to have every week, how many times do you expect them to enter their numbers every week? Do you have a very simple set of standards that you can repeat regularly? They're recitable. You'll know them. I expect this, this, and this, and that your agents would be able to reiterate that to you. And if you do have that, then my next question would be, how do they know? How often do you bring up your standards? One time in the onboarding process is really not sufficient. Again, we can't really retain that much information at any given moment. Even now, I'm going to be giving you guys a ton of stuff, content here today. And some of it is going to stick with you. And some of it you're going to, if I brought it up later, you'll be like, I don't even remember hearing that. The brain can only hold so much information at a time. And so you have to repeat your standards constantly. So I recommend doing that on your team meetings and your one-on-ones, or, using these simple standards to hold the line. So when you get into a one-on-one conversation, or maybe you're doing a little small group meeting that day, start with, all right, let's talk about, did we hit the metrics this week? Who got their 2 Met consultations this week? Who added X amount of people to the database this week? And always be looking at those metrics. I have several trainings I do with hundreds of agents every single day. And the first thing we do in our training outside of our warm-ups is we look at the numbers. We are always looking at the numbers. And I'm going to give you guys some insights today on how to work through like people that are struggling to hit the numbers. But every day I want to be looking at them and I want to celebrate the wins. And then, you also need to have a place for them to measure. So how do they do that? What tools do you have? Is it in your CRM? Do you have a spreadsheet? Do you have a leaderboard? What standards do your agents, or what tools do your agents have access to measure these standards and their efforts? Getting agents to enter their numbers was the bane of my existence for a really long time, until I started applying some reality to their life. So I stopped requiring it every single day. That wasn't realistic to life. And I stopped requiring it by a certain time. I started giving back flexibility to their lives. So for instance, I have some agents that thrive on entering their numbers at 7 p.m. or wrapping their day up at 7 p.m. And I have some agents that feel like their whole evening is gone because they've got kids and then they do some work and they've got other things they have to get done. And so we just encourage them to do it first thing in the morning. So giving them that autonomy to pick when they're going to apply the tool has been highly effective, and getting them to actually show up to the activity and like doing it over and over again. And this is one of those things that it doesn't give them that surge of dopamine that signing a contract would, or getting someone under contract, or, setting an appointment would. So when I talk to agents about these seemingly insignificant lead measures, like entering your numbers or doing role play, or which they're highly significant, but they will never give an agent the feeling that something that is more directly correlated with an outcome like a commission check would. And so I reframe this with agents where I talk about proactive resiliency versus reactive resiliency. Entering your numbers every day and doing your lead generation and role playing are acts of proactive resiliency. You're not always going to get this instant gratification feel, but it has a massive impact on your outcome. And where agents often, and not just agents, it's all of us, where we often like to thrive is in this reactive resiliency space where, when poop hits the fan, we get it done. I work great under pressure. If you're one of those people, if you say, I work great under pressure, you are into proactive resiliency. It has a time and a place, and it's a tool and a resource. But if it is your main strategy, you probably have a lot of stress, anxiety, overwhelm, et cetera. And when our agents are operating in that space on top of all the other noise that they have, it can be very difficult for them to find a way forward. And so they do nothing because our central nervous system gets activated. It activates our flight, fight, or freeze, and they're not going to be as proactive. So I want to encourage proactive resiliency and have them practicing these little acts of self-integrity, these little acts of commitment, because inevitably what happens when they do that is they learn that they can trust themselves more. So they need a place to actually show up to with this proactive resiliency. And so they need a system. How do you celebrate their wins, and how do you create energy around those activities? Furthermore, there are some additional pieces of agent engagement that you should have in your structure every day or weekly as a team owner. You should start every day with a morning connection, at least 4 of the 5 days a week, is my personal recommendation. And I do this. I have a group of agents I work with. I do this 4 days a week, 2 hours a day. It's like a really intense training that we do. And we start every single call with this morning connection. I call it the warm-ups. We do WAGs, which are wins and gratitudes. And that is where we just create energy. Your gratitude can release dopamine. When we're talking about our wins, that can release dopamine, but it just lifts the energy and it gets them to start contributing to the meeting. These morning connections should be really quick and they should be interactive and they should provide value. Now, the value doesn't always have to come directly from you, although you will be the one facilitating that. We feel valuable when we bring value. And so you can empower your team to bring value as well. So start with those wins and gratitudes, affirmations. I do affirmations and whenever I start a training, there's always a handful of people who feel like this is super woo-woo. Why are we doing this? And I'm not saying you have to do affirmations, but I will say it's been a super impactful thing in the trainings that I do. They do their affirmations and then I reinforce those affirmations. So if they say, I'm the type of agent that attracts business, I'll say, you're the type of agent who attracts business. And I'll just reinforce that into their lives. It has had such a powerful impact on our trainings. But anything like that, where they are just getting into a higher frequency energy state is a great way to create energy. And then I want to lead into skill building activities like one-on-one role play. Those should be short. They should not, and I'm going to give you a more robust role play structure today, but they should be short and specifically structured. Another really fun one is like a group script inferno. This is something I've, done for years where we'll get 2 agents to battle it out, or we'll do like a group inferno. So like I'll do an objection battle where I'll give an objection, and instead of them handling the objection, I'll have them reframe the objection. So they'd have to basically respond to that objection with a better question. So if they said, I'm going to use the same real estate agent, if that was the objection that day, we would say, how important is it for you to use the same real estate agent? Or what's important to you about using the same real estate agent? So we'd challenge them to ask better questions, and then everyone would go. And essentially, if you took more than 3 seconds to answer, or you didn't have one, you drop. And then the next round would go. And so that would be really fun. There's a lot of different skill building activities you can do to switch things up where they are getting like real life practice. Highly impactful, highly effective. You will actually see the needle move forward on their skills with things like this. And then getting into the priorities, laying out any pertinent or pressing information, and then promptly finishing that call or meeting. When these drag longer than people expect or anticipated, the value unintentionally gets diminished and you seem unreliable because it seems like you don't respect their time, or that you don't have your stuff together, or you can't control the meeting. These need to start on time and finish promptly. It is a way of creating and maintaining trust with your team. So for team meetings, have an agenda or a basic outline of what they should expect in that meeting. So I want to manage expectations. I did that with you today. I said, here's what we're going to learn. I'm going to talk about these things, and you will see that show up. You will also see that I will finish on time. I am very big about finishing on time and respecting people's time. When my meetings or trainings take longer, people start dreading being on them because there's so much unknown. Like, am I going to be here all day or not? And so these are one of those things that will cause people to unintentionally avoid things that are valuable to them because they drag. And I want to keep a familiar structure. In my trainings that I do every day, we start with our wins and gratitudes. We'll do goals and affirmations, and then we'll read from this book, Exactly What to Say for Real Estate Agents. I'll talk to you about that today as well. We'll go into our reporting. We'll address the agenda for the day. We'll dive into the content. They know when they're going to role play. And I keep this same structure every single time. It's the same basic flow. The content is different every day, and the things that we're learning are different every day, but they know what to expect next. This helps to shorten the the amount of time it feels like it's taking. It's taking the same amount of time, but it actually makes things go by way faster for them so they can stay engaged more effectively. So it's going to mitigate that drag feeling. And then I want to highlight who's hitting the goal or who's close to their goal. So if you're in your structure, you say, hey, our agents every single week, we set one appointment and we talk to 20 people or whatever your standards are going to be. And I see these range all over the place. And I see highly successful real estate teams doing 600,000 units, annually that have totally different approaches and they work. So you pick one that works for you. I'll give you some best practices today, but you reiterate the goal essentially is what I'm trying to get at. You'll highlight who's hitting the goal or close to their goals, and you're not going to highlight the losses. I know this may feel counterintuitive, but spotlighting the zeros actually has an opposite effect on the whole team. There's a lot of really good research around this, but it will not only cause low performers to often experience a negative spiral, it also reduces collaboration of the team, and the team can become less competitive if they see that those zeros are being spotlighted. It's not just because of fear of what if it's them. It starts to highlight that you accept that, and so it can create a negative precedent. Zeros are unavoidable. They're going to happen, and there are going to be agents on your team that are the lower producers, but they're kind of the mascot. They bring great culture and energy, or they are just sometimes producers, and for whatever reason you keep them there. The more you highlight the zeros, the more you highlight the fact that you accept zeros, and we don't want to highlight that. And I'm not saying don't accept zeros or hey, you shouldn't accept zeros, get them out of there. It's different for everyone. And so just highlight the wins. And then prompt start and finish. And one more thing about the highlighting the losses, it plummets morale. And it fosters a culture of fear and shame. And research does show that these are just not sustainable motivators. And then for team culture building, we want to get them tethered to community. So one way you can do that is through your client events, doing, like back to school drives, things like that. Mixing community into your client events is a great way to develop culture, because when you guys feel like you're working towards a common goal that's bigger than you, it creates a lot of connection. So you can leverage events to do that. Also, like getting your team together for client events is a big deal. If you're doing maybe a conference, getting your team to go to conferences together, you can leverage events that you're not necessarily putting on. One thing that I see be really effective here for like big conferences, annual conferences, is like doing a production contest and paying for someone's ticket to get there. If they can't afford it, they can start to produce. But these can be mixed purpose. And then you also want to have some intergroup community. So I want to encourage support with each other. So you can encourage your team owners or not your team owner, your director of sales or your pod leaders to be the ones who give answers, or some of your higher producing agents. This has a double powerful effect, because what ends up happening a lot is team owners get lost in the gotta minutes, and you can sometimes struggle to hold boundaries. And so one way that what I like to encourage my coaching clients that are team owners to protect their time without saying no is to say yes, and here's when, yes, and here's who, yes, and here's how. So when you get a question around something, someone on your team would be, is happy to answer, ready to answer, and they're a better resource for it, you can say, yes, absolutely, I'll get that question answered for you, and here's who is going to do it. And so that's what I mean by encouraging support. You have them to start leaning on each other. If your team is large enough, you could do small groups and pods. If your team is the size of a small group, I don't recommend doing that right now. One of the mistakes team owners can make is trying to leverage themselves out of being engaged with the team. And I've seen that have some very negative impacts over and over and over again. You really need to have a solid structure in place before you can do that. And one way to do that is by building on those small groups and pods when the team the team size justifies it. And then fostering growing from within. So, doing things like maybe you guys have a book club that you read together, or maybe there's a group of you that work out together, doing things that help foster their personal growth, or things that they can do together and their as teammates, and encouraging that as another way to get that intergroup community. Okay, so these agent engagement is what gets your agents to stay close to the activities. And that's one of the reasons we spend so much time on something like agent engagement. I'm telling you, this is the secret sauce for what I do. I stay engaged with the agents. They get text check-ins from me. I know what's going on in their lives. We have a personal feeling, but I still have boundaries. I still have quality of life. I'm not spending every moment with them, but I stay connected. When I built my first coaching program, I stayed connected to the agents. I would throw, community events. It was kind of like just a big team is what it ended up being, 180 person team. But we did freaking medieval times together. We did scavenger hunts together. And it's not everyone went to these things, and that wasn't my goal. Where the people that naturally clicked, we encouraged it. I was also spread across 2 states and 8 locations with this, and we still had that community. So it's possible. You just have to stay connected and let them know that it matters to you. That when they know that they matter to you is when they start performing better, because they have somebody that is watching them that they know actually cares. So let's talk about the ones that fail, the agents that struggle with failure. When agents are struggling to show up, it's not often because they don't care. Getting into real estate, this. It is a huge risk. And most of them are lifelong employees. It's not just a culture shock. They're experiencing a lot of fear around this. And so when agents are failing, I tend to look at root cause. There are some that you can help and some that you cannot. And I look at help and support very differently. I want to facilitate and support agents more than I want to help them. And so we'll talk about that in a second when I talk about loving them into failure. So I want to make generous assumptions. When someone's not showing up, I just want to make generous assumptions and come from curiosity. So when I have an agent that's, it's been a few days and they're not showing up and I'm not seeing any activities, my first assumption is going to be they probably have something going on. And then I'm going to come from curiosity. Hey, checking in. I haven't seen you in a couple of days. Is everything okay? And then I'm going to get their answer, and then I'm going to hold the line. So I'm going to take ownership first always. If for some reason an agent feels like it's okay to just disappear, I must have made that feel like that was okay to do. And so I always look at where's my DNA in this? How am I showing up? And then I will find the gap. If I know that, no, I did a text check-in with them, I sent out, reminders or whatever, boxes you're checking around your ownership. If I know I did all that, then I'll find whatever the gap is between me and that agent. And oftentimes, guys, life is just showing up. One of the ways that I've mitigated the seeing a lot, the rampantness of life showing up, is giving them permission for life to show up and then teaching them how to communicate it. Behavior is nothing more than an unmet need. So when someone is exhibiting quote unquote bad behavior, AKA not showing up the way that we'd want them to, there's oftentimes a need that is not being met either by themselves or by me. And so I can identify what my DNA is in that, or I can help them identify where their DNA is in that. I always come back to me first. So, I set the precedent and I hold the standard. So if I'm kind of known for this on my trainings, no one's off camera. No one is off camera. Now, this webinar is very different because I can't see your faces, but if we were face to face right now, I'd be seeing all your faces. On our trainings, you have to be on camera. You cannot be in a moving car, especially driving. And if you're on your phone and you're not present, I just boot you from the call. If you're hitting any one of those boxes, I boot you from the call. Here's how I mitigate that being an issue and why I get so many people to be totally plugged in and engaged on my trainings. And again, I've got hundreds of people a day on my trainings and they're all virtual. I'm completely virtual. I say, hey, I'm not judging you. I'm not mad at you. I'm not disappointed in you. I love you just the same. However, the moment that I make it okay for you to be off camera is the moment I allow everyone else to fail. And so I'm going to choose to fight for your highest good. And if you can't be present, that's all right. I get it that life shows up. And I'm lovingly booting you off this call, and you can come back as soon as you can be present, and there will be no animosity or passive aggressiveness about it. You'll just come back. And anything you missed, you can get on the recording. I have high standards, but I don't operate with rigidity, because rigidity is not a sustainable behavior for people to operate inside of. It gives them little room for failure, and failure is important. Agents, we have to fail. It's a part of our path to fail and then learn how to move forward. I'm not trying to teach agents how not to fail. I'm trying to teach agents how to fail and move forward imperfectly, and to stop the reset button cycle. The biggest struggle that we have when we are trying to work towards a goal that is important to us is when it doesn't go the way we planned. We wipe the slate clean and we say, I'll start tomorrow, I'll start Monday. And then, Monday passes and you didn't do it. And then this next month, then all of a sudden weeks or months go by and you're recultivating that energy all over again and having to start over, and it's not effective. And so I learned again early on with agents that if they got permission to keep showing up, even when they were struggling, that they just kept getting better and better if I welcome them with open arms. Now, there are boundaries to this. It's not a free-for-all. It's not a freaking free-for-all for everybody. However, it's okay for them to screw up or struggle to show up. I'm going to encourage them I'm going to teach them how to move forward and when that does happen. And it does. So not letting them into failure. There's a difference between help and support. Help is saying, let me do it for you. Support is saying, here, let me stand by your side while you do this. And one of my favorite analogies to try and give you a visual of how this works is picture, I'm your trainer and you're doing bicep curls. Okay. You're getting your pump on today and you're holding on to the dumbbells, but I've got my hands on the dumbbells and I'm pushing them up and down for you. Your muscles aren't growing. You're not getting any strength. You're not really learning anything, but you have the illusion that you're doing the work. That is helping someone when you're trying to do it for them. Leaders, I know you do this when you feel like it's wasting your time and you're like, just let me do it. Okay. Not just with your agents, but with your ops. It's not teaching them anything. You have to slow down and you have to allow them to work through it. I can't tell you when my kid is trying to, I've got a 2-year-old and he's learned how to buckle his own seat. And I do this much faster. Okay. And he's taking his time, but I really execute on my patience and allow him to work through the process. And now he's so much faster. I just pops it right in. So, it's the same concept here. It takes time for people to work through like the struggle part, but the more you empower them to be the ones to do it themselves, the more skilled they'll be at it. So we don't love them into failure. We don't love them into failure by doing it for them. We don't love them into failure by accepting, their non-participation either. It's okay if they didn't make the cut. If I have people miss more than 3 days, it's an auto drop. In one of my trainings, they have to have very high amount of what we call full records and appointments within 30 days, or I drop them from the class, no questions asked. They can take the class again later, but we have a very hardcore standard on it because we have a very big goal at the end of the training, and they're fighting for it. And I say, I want you to be here. I don't want to drop anyone. Here's the hard and fast rule I don't make exceptions on. Here are all the ways that you can show up to hitting that goal. Here's all the things you're going to experience that are going to challenge you along the way, the resistance that you'll feel. Most of you will push this to the last minute, and here's what you'll expect if that happens. However, if you don't have it by this day, that's it. All right, so you can create boundaries and you can have cutoffs on things, or not allow certain behavior, allow certain things, but be compassionate and generous in the process. Okay, now that we understand how to get our agents engaged and into action, let's get into how do we actually build the skill set? How do we turn our agents into appointment setting machines? So agent skill set has, there are a few facets. There's a lot more, but again, we have a finite amount of time today. So I'm going to focus on the things that I think are the most impactful now. Make them master question askers. Master question askers. Have them practice asking questions every day. gamify things and have question battles and in the wild assignments. I'll give you guys some insights on that today. Have a role play framework. I really want to keep these role plays within 15 minutes for the one-on-one role plays. And the more that these drag on, the less valuable they'll feel for your agents. So each agent should get 6 or 7 minutes to practice as the agent. There should be 1 minute for feedback, and then you'll repeat it. That'll keep it in the 15-minute time frame. And then lastly, I want to inspect the database and identify the gaps. So I want to look at their dial to contact and contact to appointment set. These lead measures have a massive impact on their goal. If they're at a 0.5% to a 1% conversion, it's 100 to 200 no's to find one yes. It equates to one to two appointments a month, and it translates to 0.33 to 0.66 closings annually. It is not enough to keep your agents in the business and for them to be making money. So I need to be looking at their dial to contact and contact to appointment set. And I want to see them go from a 1% to a 2% and then to a 5% on that metric, because that will yield at a 5%, a 36 to 40 units annually. And you should be able to monitor their daily conversations. So you need a tool for that. So let's talk about mastering questions. There's a book, Exactly What to Say for Real Estate Agents. I use this in every single training. Hopefully you've heard of it before. I use this in literally every single training that I do, every single training. And every day we read from this. I read it and I joke about it. I'm going to read to you like it's kindergarten story time and you're 5 years old. And I'm going to read this book. And the reason I read it and I don't let them read it is because time and because I'm not trying to have any, random things that throw me off that day. I read it to them. We go through the examples and then I get 2 people to give me a live example. So I have them practice it in real time. And then they have to submit a question after every class. So I have a link for them. It goes to a simple form. I use Airtable for everything, but you could use Google Sheets and Google Forms, and it works just as well. Not as sexy as Airtable, but it's just as effective. And they send that question in every day. And then at the end of our training, we actually have all their answers and we send it back to them in a PDF to review later. They should be learning how to ask a question every day. So you can do this in your team meetings. All right, who's going to give us an example question? Or you could do this as a part of their daily metrics. I also do a 3 questions exercise. This is sending them into the wild assignments. There are 2 that I have them do. Number 1 is that the next 5 conversations that they have, that they would ask 3 questions before they make a definitive statement. So they can respond, I'm good if someone asks how they're doing back, but then they would go into another question. They wouldn't make any personal declarative statements, and they would ask 3 questions before they actually make a statement. For the people that want to really challenge themselves, I challenge them to do 5 questions before they make a definitive statement. This alone, just this one exercise will make them more confident in their ability to get consultations converted and get them to get more appointments set, because they get really good at asking questions. Another one I love is the discount exercise. It's the most hated and then most revered. And they literally go into I tell them the next 3 to 5 purchases you make, no matter how big or small, the only thing you're going to ask is, can I get a discount on that? You're not going to say, please. You're not going to use your military if you've got it. You're not going to say, my coach or my team owner is making me do this. You're just going to say, can I get a discount on that? This conditions them to practice overcoming the fear of fear, as opposed to trying to figure out how to not be afraid of getting rejected. So it's just rejection therapy at the end of the day. I talked to you guys about the objection battles, and then the questions palooza is them literally just doing that inferno where they get an objection and they ask a question, or they only ask questions for the whole time. And if you take more than 3 seconds or you don't have an answer, you're out. And then we start over with the next group. And you can go to ChatGPT, dude, and find any little activity that you can do to get them asking more questions. Because the more they ask questions, the less they need to worry about how to say or what to say. Sometimes they're trying to dig into their, memory cache and remember what that script said. But if you can actually give them the competency, then they don't need the memorization. Okay. Role play. So my personal recommendation here is that for one-on-one role plays, this is not including group role plays with the team, one-on-one role plays that your agents do it 3 times a week minimum, and that they do not exceed 5 per week. It is one of the most fundamental, important, effective tools that they have available to them. Role play will increase their dollar per hour so fast. And if they stop doing it, it can be detrimental to their end game and in turn your end game. So them burning out on it is not a good idea. So I recommend that agents max at 5 times a week and that they do not exceed 15 minutes or they will start to devalue that tool that they have. And then 3 times a week minimum. The rule in role play is there are no small talk. There are no stories, and we get into real-time role play. So what I mean by that is we go right into character. I know ahead of time what I'm going to be role playing, and that's the first thing I say when we get into our role play. I'm working on expireds, and the objection I want you to give me today is that I'm going to use the same real estate agent. And then the other person says, okay, great. I'm working with online buyer leads, and the objection I want you to give me today is I'm just looking. And then I'll say, okay, great, I'll go first. Or they say, okay, great, I'll go first. And then I ring, and we get into the role play. There are no stories or no small talk. Oh, how's it going? How's your day? I'm just driving into the office. None of that. You're going right into that real-time role play. Because again, if they start taking forever on this, they start devaluing it, which means they stop doing it. And then they don't get the benefit of seeing their dollar per hour skyrocket because the one thing standing between them and everything they want is their ability to convert and show up to the activities. The no stories goes to the feedback. Everyone gets feedback. And I recommend starting with what they did well and then what they need to work on. When we give feedback, we do it tactfully, and I'm going to unpack a little more of that here in a second, but we do that tactfully. And we start by saying, here's what you did well, and here's what I want you to work on. And then the only thing that the agent should say in response to that is, thank you. The no stories means, well, we didn't have that much time. I was going to get to that. No, we want our brain marinating on that feedback and trying to repair it so it doesn't happen again. And so we want to ruminate. We want our brain to ruminate just a little bit on like not feeling that way again on the things that they need to work on. So just thank you. And then it marinates. All right, inspecting the database. So I need to spend an hour a day inspecting the database. I want my agents to aim for 20 to 35 2-minute conversations per week. Again, this is a best practice. There are some competing ideologies on this, but I'm giving you a range for that specific fact. You choose what works best for you and your team. Agents doing 20 conversations a day is a great recipe for burnout. It's not sustainable. So if they're going to do that, it needs to be for a finite amount of time. It cannot be the standard because it's not a sustainable standard. And you'll see your agents fluctuating and going through peaks and valleys and feast and famine a lot more often. And you're going to be frustrated as a result because it's going to affect your bottom line. So your agents should have some sustainable approaches to the way they have conversations with their clients and with leads. Keep your agents focused on lead measures. So when I'm looking at the database, I want to look at how many dials did they have? How many 2-minute conversations did they have? Depending on your CRM will determine if you're able to get that data. So at the bare minimum, if you can't get to the 2-minute conversations data, then I want to shift to 7 to 10 contacts, meaning that they had 7 to 10 conversations, no matter how long they just actually talked to somebody. You would just there's a brain fart in my head. It's like an easy word. You would just expand that amount a little bit. All right. And then I want to identify how many days a week you want them entering their numbers. Good rule of thumb is 5 days a week. Maybe you want to go for 3. 7 is not very sustainable. Okay. Let's go on to agent competency, and we are looking good for time. Excellent. So agent competency, I need to show them how. This is how I'm going to get more signed agreements in these consultations. I need to show them how. And then I need them to show me, and then I need to give them feedback. So I want to demonstrate what I want them to learn, and then I want to follow a defined structure while doing it. There should be a simple step or process for them to anchor that structure in their brain. So if you're doing a buyer appointment or a seller appointment, have it, anywhere from, 3 to 10 steps that they can follow. There might be a lot of stuff in the steps, but they need an anchor point to get through it so that they're hitting the points that you want them to hit. Then you're going to have them show you. So now they're going to demonstrate that process back to you in that same structure. And you're checking that they can follow the process first. The skills will develop with practice. I want to make sure they got the process right. And then I'm going to give them that feedback. It should be tactful and constructive. So I want to combine process with practice. We need practical application, demonstrations, and feedback to foster our skill set development. So on the show them how piece, I'm going to structure these, appointment processes, 5 to 7 easy stages or steps. I'm going to reinforce each stage by reviewing with them before they move to the next one. So when I train the buyer consultation process, I'll give them step 1, and then we'll talk about what's in step 1. And then I'll say, what was step 1, everyone? And then they'll give me step 1. And then we'll teach them step 2, and then we'll finish that. And I'll say, what was step 1, everyone? And what was step 2? And then so on and so forth. So I have them, reiterate that every single time. And then I'm going to provide context on why I do things the way that I do it. One of the most ineffective statements you could say to someone is because I said so, or because that's just how I do it. The giving someone context and allowing them to experience comprehension is what is going to help them retain and get better. So be willing to explain yourself. People just genuinely want to understand. And then they show you. So I want to keep the focus on competency more than a word for word execution. Once I get past that, like the structure phase. So I want to make sure that they can hit all of the pieces inside of the structure. So all of the different steps, more than I'm worried about them memorizing it. Memorizing is something that they can develop with time. Make sure that they know how to get through it. Have them practice step by step first. So have them practice the first step and nail that. And then have them practice the second step and then nail that. And then however many steps, and then have them put it all together. It would benefit you to create a checklist of everything that they need in each of those steps so that they understand what they've missed. And then I would have them do this with their other teammates and then eventually get to you to do like some sort of like a test out. And then I want to give them feedback. It should be constructive and tactful. It should go through the filter of how I do, or what do I do to empower them to be better? And then it shouldn't involve your ego at all. Honesty without tact is cruel. And I can tell you that I used to be the type of person who would tell everybody anything that came to my mind the moment I thought it. And then I would have this mindset of like, well, it's true. Sorry, you needed to hear it. Not effective. And really what's happening is you're weaponizing truth and you're letting your ego feel good for a minute. So give them feedback that will actually make them better, that will empower them, not feedback where it's like, sorry, you sucked. Okay. Like, let's not treat it like American Idol. All right. Be a coach to them, not a judge. All right. So let me give you guys some final tips, man. I am killing it with the time today. Look at me. Let me give you some final tips. You can leverage video on this, but you cannot fully remove the human interaction. So yes, you can do a course if you need to leverage your time. However, there needs to be some reinforcement of human interaction. They're not going to retain as well through a course. So bits and pieces can be in a course, but really it should be mostly human. Get comfortable with time and energy being required of the leader through this process. If you're like, I just need to get myself out of production right now, I would really want to make sure that there is somebody that is leading them at a high level, and that's somebody that you hope is going to figure it out. And then your agent should role play this often, even after they do like a test out. Every now and again, maybe once a quarter, maybe twice a year, you have the whole team go through the consultation process again, appointment process again. And you have them make sure they know the steps and that it's just something that's indoctrinated into your organization. All right. Let me go ahead and recap here everything that we learned. We've talked about modeling what you want from your agents. So a good leader is going to model the behavior. I want you to lean in and stay engaged with your agents. I want you to have high standards and high compassion, and to get your agents constantly practicing. They will get better with those opportunities to actually, or they will develop it with actually getting the ability to practice. All right. Suneet, can we take some questions?
Yeah. Mia, number one, great job. I've seen you do this before and I took notes. So great job. I love like seeing something that you said, right? Is you can watch it, but it's bits and pieces. So if you guys didn't catch any of this, like I said, we're going to be sending out the recording. Before we get into any questions, I want to make sure that you guys have the link for the next webinar, and I'm going to put it in. Oh, I can't share it to this. I can't share it to the chat. All right. I'll post it on Facebook and I'm going to send it to you in an email. The next title is How to Develop Critical Operations so you can drive sales and boost recruiting and help everything in here. Here's the link with the illustrious Lauren Rathgeb, who's the Director of Client Services and Ops Ninja at Reside. So sign up for that. That'll be in a little bit over a month. And let's get into the Q&A. First question.
I've got one from Tyler DeLu, and this is such a good one. How do you overcome the fear of agents on the team that they have around role play? We've tried numerous times and have, as managers, role played ourselves first to ease them into it. And they still basically have panic attacks or pretend to take a call or need to leave. So they hop off in the morning Zoom. Okay. So the way that thank you, Steve. Guys, put any questions you have in the Q&A because the chat's disabled. So if you have questions in the Q&A, or you can raise your hand and I'll get to you in a second. Okay. So first off, I manage expectations and I let them know, hey, we're about to experience something super awkward. And I give them a very not a lot of information. Like I don't give them a lot of structure in that first week of role plays. And I say, okay, guys, we're going to role play and it's going to feel awkward and it's going to feel uncomfortable. And this is a really important part of the process because you're going to be traversing awkwardness and discomfort in every single one of your calls. So we need to practice overcoming the fear of that. We need to practice getting awkward so that you can overcome this in real life calls. I also don't accept people not role playing. So if they, they get all put into breakout rooms like immediately because I do it virtually, but I let them know hey, if you think you're going to jump off this call and you're not going to role play, I will call you later and get you scheduled with a role play. So I just don't let people not role play. I will go through the follow up and I will get them connected with another agent, or I will do the role play myself. If I notice someone just totally avoiding, I'm going to address it head on. And I'm going to say, hey, I know, and I'm going to come from curiosity. I'm going to make a generous assumption. I'm going to say, hey, I noticed that you're not showing up to the role plays. Is everything okay? And then they'll say, I'm scared, blah, 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 blah. And then I'll respond with a question instead of trying to convince them out of how they feel. I'll say, could it be possible that would start to go away if you got to practice? How important is it to you to be able to have calls in real life and see business come from it? Well, do you think that it would be important for us to role play then? So ask good questions.
Say that again. Say that one more time because that was a great answer.
Do you think that it would be important for us to role play then? Is that the one you wanted?
Yes. Okay. Yes. I love that.
Good.
So good.
What metrics do you have your people enter and how often? So I focus on conversations, and we use Follow Up Boss in our organization. So what's beautiful about that is we can very easily see those 2-minute conversations. I focus on lead measures. I focus on Met consults. We focus on set appointments. We focus on conversations had, and then we celebrate signed agreements. So in my training, they have to get something called full records as well, which is not a common metric inside of a team environment, but it's been highly beneficial for us to get them talking to more people. So I just stay focused on conversations if I was a team.
Let me just tell you guys something about Mia's full records and how important it is, and how even me, the top team in my big ass city, never talked about it. Part of her training that she does is, hey, yes, you have leads. Yes, company provided leads. A full record is adding people's name, email, phone number, address to the company CRM. So we have a metric that we want them to add X amount of full records through the course of this training so that we're supporting them with their SOI business as well as with the lead business that the organization provides. So getting those full records, her method of doing that masterful.
Yeah. And we provide resources for that too. We provide a structure for that. So anytime that we ask them to do something, I make sure that I have a robust process, steps they can follow. I put booby traps everywhere. So if they can't find it in one place, I've got a link in 10 places for them to find it. And I start to anticipate the questions that they'll have. When they're tech challenged, I address that head on. Hey, some of you are going to be tech challenged as we go through this, what you're going to experience with your agents. Here's what I want you to do first. And if you can't get that, here's what that process would look like. And then I'll help you. So I redirect behavior when they're struggling. I let them know what I want them to do or how I want them to do it. And I give them, a path forward. Everyone gets a path.
Awesome.
Do we have any more questions? Oh, here we go.
Yes, we have Amanda Howard. Would you mind sharing your master questions?
Yeah. So what I mean by that is get them to master asking questions. And so, and Steve, I love your next question. I'll get to that in a second. Exactly what to say for real estate agents is one great resource for this. And it has a field guide. So questions I normally get are, can I do this on Audible? You could. It's way better in person because it has a field guide. And then should I read it all at once? I would recommend doing one a day and then practicing asking this question, even if you did one a week and every day you practice a question. When I first started coaching, my coach made me write 50 questions a day. And that's why I've gotten so great at asking questions. And no matter what situation I'm in, I can ask a question. So, your agents, that's the thing that's going to get them to connect to people. And here's why. When we talk about ourselves, we feel, when we feel connected to the person listening. So when someone's talking to, when we're asking questions to someone and they're answering questions and they're talking about themselves, they feel connected to us. So the more I ask questions, the more connected they'll feel. The more connected they'll feel, the more emotional proximity will develop. And the more emotional proximity develops, the more top of mindness occurs. And I become the person they know, like, and trust. So this is just one resource. Steve said, do you have required Zooms daily? I do. I have it 4 days a week and I have an 80% rule. So you just need to be there 80% of the time. I define how many absences they can have, no questions asked. And then the requirement is that they give me notification. So they let me know when they're not going to make it, so that we have to keep the open line of communication. Which is that gets a lot more autonomy. It's the same thing when I used to run restaurants and we had like inventory issues because people were giving away drinks. I said, here's a comp tab. Use it as much as you want. If you ever need to go over, just ask. The answer will 99% of the time be yes. And then, for the first few weeks, they used that whole comp tab. And then eventually they stopped using it because they started taking ownership and protecting the inventory. So it's just giving people more autonomy back. You're welcome, Amanda. Do I use exactly what to role play cards? I don't, but we could. It's not a tool I can use in my trainings right now because of time, but I would love to use those. They're awesome. The role cards. Yeah.
I've never seen them.
They're cool. Phil Jones, I did a mastermind with him once and he had them.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Okay.
You rock, Mia. Thank you, Steve. Thank you.
Is that the same Steve Pugh from Maverick?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's up, Steve? Good.
I hope I see you in Tahoe.
Yes, Steve. I hope we see everybody in Tahoe. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Those were some good ones.
Yeah. Great questions.
All right. Well, you guys, I want you to remember, Mia, go ahead and put the slide up for our next webinar again, which is how to develop the critical operations part of your business so you can drive sales and boost recruiting with our operations superstar, Lauren. Mia, I think Mia did a great job. What do you guys think? Drop a comment in the Q&A if you think Mia did a great job. Okay.
Yeah. Tell me how good I am.
Yes. She, yes, I think that she does a great job. So much that we hired her to help her train all of our team. So, thank you, Mia, for doing a great job. Thank you, everyone who joined us. If you have any more questions or you want to connect, just reach out to one of us on social, right? Facebook or Instagram. We're both easy to see. It's our goal to do one of these free no pitch webinars every single month around a different topic that we're seeing working in our own personal business and all of our coaching teams and our Reside teams all across North America. So keep an eye out. If you got something out of this, I was going to say like and subscribe, but that would be a YouTube. If you got something out of this, please share with a friend and let you know. Reach out if you have any questions, and we'll see you guys real soon. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you so much for catching this episode of the Reside Platform podcast. If you got something out of it, please share with a friend. You know, we don't run any ads for this podcast at all. So your word of mouth is how we continue to get this podcast to grow and get better guests and be able to do more cool stuff. So click like and subscribe, share with a friend, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Reside Platform podcast.